And so, they watch the events unfold from the back of Astolfo's hippogriff. Here the story comes to a close. The fantastical city, created by the soothing words of a woman terrified of death, was falling apart. A downward gaze will reveal the men aboard the flying saucer waving their hands wildly. As it made its way to the ground in what might generously be described as an erratic manner. No doubt they will soon arrive at their homes, where their loving families await them. They will tell their wives, their children, their friends about their adventures here, and, in time, most likely forget about them. That is their story, a story that only they can tell. The destruction continues apace, pieces of earth, as though suddenly remembering they are not meant to fly, make their way back to the ground where they belong, accompanied by great sounds akin to heavy rain, the peal of thunder, or a woman sobbing. La Puta, the whore, for the woman who gave it its name, one filled with self-loathing and resignation. It may have felt like a part of herself, one to which she had entrusted her fondest wish. Or perhaps it was more akin to a past she despised, one she wished to destroy by crashing it into the world. No doubt such a question will find its answer in the stories only she can tell. Perhaps it needs a bit more. Thus, they succeeded brilliantly in carrying out the remnant order for the underground world. But we must not forget that there were 4 pillars which escaped from the Temple of Time. We know that there are other survivors still remaining. Curiously, this case, much like Shinjuku, seemed steeped in stories. Putting the question of whether these 2 cases shared similar themes aside, the time will no doubt come soon when they find themselves in the midst of another new story. That does make it clear, but it also rather superfluous. Then again, it may be important to allude to the fact that these events are still in motion. I just can't seem to find the right words for this last sentence. I think I shall have to come back to it later. Jotting down my thoughts to help pass the time is all well and good, but it's clear that I have no talent for the written word. I learned that lesson well during the case of the blanched soldier and the case of the lion's mane. If it's all going to turn out the same in the end, I may as well leave the storytelling to Watson and save myself some time. Then again, when you get right down to it, perhaps there would be no need to record my cases at all if there were a beautiful woman with a lovely voice ready to tell these stories at any time.
I'd like to keep telling you what's going on myself, but Holmes has been insisting that he have a turn. Go ahead, great detective.
Pardon, my apologies for the intrusion. I'm quite impressed that you've managed to restore both Fumakotaro's magical energy and your own magical circuits, Master. I had deduced that the trouble with our communications most likely lay with you. To begin, your mind was able to attain something similar to a physical body after being transported in a manner not unlike a ray shift. However, that body is very much a temporary construct. Your real one is still asleep here in Chaldea. Therefore, as long as your new body was able to adjust to that world, there shouldn't have been any issue, but had it not, it is entirely possible that your magical circuits wouldn't function properly. After all, the comms device you always use is as much a kind of mystic code as it is a machine. Which means, if the magical circuits within your body were unable to acquire energy, your comms device would fail to function as well.
When I first got here, I couldn't summon anyone.
As I suspected, then either you adjusted to this world at some point, or perhaps someone helped you to adjust through some special means?
Helping me adjust. I don't know what you're talking about, but remember, the karma implanted by the Curse of Annihilation destroyed its vessel, pride and honor, along with everything else. In which case, it shouldn't be much of a mystery.
Come to think of it, she did say this world was hell anyway. Hell, Fascinating. that would mean you have indeed found yourself in a nightmare. Mr. Silverchaos has wandered into the rift between dreams and reality. That is, I believe, the most likely explanation for our current predicament. A rift? Correct. Miss Da Vinci gave a brief rundown before, but to be more precise, the medical data from the last incident and Mr. Silverchaos' condition during that nightmare he saw matched the data for his current condition very closely. Whether he remembers it or not, everything was carefully recorded in Chaldea's library. The medical team who monitored Mr. Silverchaos during the last incident did an excellent job. At any rate, given the overlap between the two data sets, the answer is clear. Once again,
my dream got connected to somewhere else.
Precisely. This place where you now find yourself is neither a prior point in history nor a singularity that threatens humanity. It is either a closed-off subspace not unlike a reality marble, a separate timeline, or an alternate world. Whichever it is, it has no effect on humanity at large. It is a special world does indeed exist, but is part of your dream at the same time. In other words, that's the rift between dreams and reality? Correct. And it is here that the woman peeking out from behind you becomes very important, Miss Miyamoto Musashi. I'm glad to see you're all in good spirits. Now, let us proceed, Miyamoto Musashi. Given what Miss Hewlett has told me about her, I have devised a hypothesis. She is a traveler, a world crosser, a one-of-a-kind being best described as a mobile singularity. And currently she is with Mr. Silverchaos. And so, nothing more need be said.
Mind saying it anyway?
I try not to make a habit of over-explaining things, as I generally find doing so to be rather lacking in tact. But, very well. I described Miss Musashi as a mobile singularity precisely because of the many connotations such a term implies. While one of those connotations is certainly that anything and everything becomes possible, there is more to it. Despite her unusual nature, she alone would not cause this sort of inter-dream phenomenon to occur. For example, the prior 7-day incident would never have arisen had the King of Mages not served as both an external and internal trigger. In other words, there is another factor at work here besides Miss Miyamoto. Go on, give it some thought. I imagine you must have some idea of who that could be.
You really do love to treat your theories like truth, don't you, Holmes?
Believe it or not, this is not how I would prefer to go about it either. But circumstances being what they are, I felt I had no choice. Who else could it be? For example, say there were multiple mobile singularities in the same world. Such a phenomenon would certainly be unprecedented. It could result in any number of abnormalities or other unusual phenomena. Thinking about it in those terms, is there no one who comes to mind? I'm glad to see you have arrived at the same conclusion that I did. True, that does line up with everything we've seen so far, even before Untitled Castle showed up. Monsters began appearing throughout Shimosa at the same time that the sorcerer and the heroic spear swordmasters were first seen. Furthermore, the swordmasters always had monsters accompany them, and many more appeared in the castle town right when Untitled Castle showed up. I had thought that was just a natural phenomenon, so that sorcerer was actually summoning them here all along. Do these monsters act in ways that further this sorcerer's interest?
Yeah, I think so. They definitely obey the swordmaster's commands.
Then we can safely assume that this person is the source of every abnormality occurring in that world. Presumably.
You're not totally sure?
In my original hypothesis, I surmised that Miss Musashi should be able to control these monsters in the same way. But that does not appear to be the case. Therefore, I expect the difference is most likely a matter of output. This sorcerer most likely has a stronger mobile singularity temperament than Miss Musashi.
So, you mean he's the same as me, but a more experienced traveler?
Precisely. I must admit that I dislike piling hypotheses one atop another like this. I would prefer to keep my silence, given the number of lingering doubts I still have. Nonetheless, as we discussed earlier, this situation simply does not allow for such luxuries. It would be one thing if Moriarty had a hand in this, but to think I would have to explain a case where my deductions were still incomplete.
Thanks for helping us, Holmes.
Ah, yes, just to be clear, the things I have told you here are not the full extent of my thoughts on this matter. I have chosen to withhold some facts and estimates for the time being, so as not to unduly color your preconceptions. I trust you can understand that. Nevertheless, the dream world you find yourself in right now is still quite real. If you die there, you will die here as well, so make absolutely sure you return to Chaldea alive. I believe you mean we, Leonardo da Vinci. After all, I am the one who did most of the work investigating the association movements, anonymizing the spirit origin crap, and dismissing the servants. Not that it was especially onerous for me, of course.
Holmes?
Ah, yes, precisely the sort of reaction I was hoping for. That makes all the time I spent hiding in the shadows worthwhile.
Insurance policy?
Indeed, in the event that we face an enemy we cannot see, we will need an ally the enemy cannot see in turn. Hence, our extreme caution. Of course, I am no fighter. Should things turn violent, I won't hesitate to retreat to the workshop.
What about your Baritsu?
Baritsu is strictly for self-defense. If armed assailants were to attack, I would be able to protect myself. I most heartily concur. Now then, I think I shall return to the workshop. And don't worry! If a time should come when you are in prison, that is when I shall reveal my most secret technique.
So, like Super Baritsu?
Why not take him up on his offer? This is the first time in a year you've been comrades in arms after all. Holmes! I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. My apologies. That is, as they say in modern parlance, simply how we great detectives roll. And there you are. That is the situation we find ourselves in. Chaldea is under attack by an unknown military force. All exits has been sealed off, preventing any escape. Gordov's private soldiers are doing their best to fight the intruders off, but it won't be long now before our adversary claims victory. Our task is quite simple. As we cannot escape outside, we will escape underground. Our adversary has yet to occupy the underground hangar, so that is where we will go. There we will find a shipping container in which we can take shelter. As it happens, I rescued 4 other staff members along the way and instructed them to head to the hangar as well. I will consult alacrity. Move now, while those hallways are still empty of enemy soldiers. Their attention appears to be directed towards the command room for the moment, but once they have seen to their business there, it won't be long before they find the underground facilities. I can see you've steeled yourself for the dangers ahead. Good. A word of advice then. Go around the command room by the way of the L2 stairs. That will send you the opposite direction of those black guard soldiers. I expect you will find Miss Da Vinci inside her workshop, but you will need to make your way through the command room regardless. Once you have met up with her, come straight to the hangar. Regretfully, I will not be able to go with you. Allow me to explain. That is a spare body Miss Da Vinci created for herself in case of emergency. It's a relatively low-cost solution, though unfortunately it has a commensurately low output. And so, she is able to behave as though she is simply picking up where the former Da Vinci left off, even though she is a low-ranking servant who only just awakened. If you're quite finished with your introductions, please get back to the controls, Da Vinci. Need I remind you that you are an artificial servant created expressly for the purpose of piloting this all-terrain void transporter the shadow border. Without you, the shadow border cannot function at full capacity.
Shadow border. Ugh. What a jump! That was a slope crossing impact, wasn't it?
Correct. I see you're quite the driving enthusiast, Gordov.
Why, yes. As a matter of fact, I don't like to brag about it, but I am something of an amateur racer. I am the sponsor, driver, and strategist, all rolled into one. Music of Phoenix, they call me.
Now then, we're about to reach the ice shelf. From there, we'll head for the coast and the sea beyond.
Coast?
Oh, that's right. You don't know where we are, do you? Well then, take a look out the window, Mr. SilverChaos. It's not every day one gets a chance to see scenery like this.